Hey, what's up everybody, this is me and welcome back to another Borderlands 2 Pearlescent showcase. Now I'm doing this one a little bit differently in that I've actually recorded the gameplay and this commentary separately, so hopefully that'll keep the actual video more coherent and I can actually get some of the points that I want to get across a little bit easier. Today I'm going to be going over the Bekah, which is a Pearlescent Rarity Jacob's assault rifle. Now I didn't actually go over how to get Pearlescents in the Unforgiven video because I completely forgot. So I am just going to give a quick little guide here on how to find Pearlescent Rarity weapons. Now, if you have the Ultimate Vault Hunter Mode Upgrade Pack 2 at or above level 61, you will find tubby enemies rarely spawning around places like the Dust, the Arid Nexus, or places like that, where you would usually find skags or spider ants. If there is a chance for a badass enemy to spawn, then there is a chance for it to be a tubby enemy. Now once you kill these tubby enemies, they are quite tough, so just be aware of that. But once you kill them, they have a very, very low chance to drop a Pearlescent, as well as a few other things in their loot pool, such as legendary class mods, a couple of skins, a couple of shields. So they have quite a crowded loot pool, making it very difficult to actually get any kind of Pearlescents whatsoever, let alone the ones that you want. But yeah, that is the most effective way to get this Pearlescent in particular. There is another method, but it's not worth discussing. I might eventually make another video about how to farm tubbies, what the best route is that I personally like going through. And there is one other source for a couple of other Pearlescents that is worth talking about that I will talk about in those videos. But enough about how to get it, let's actually show off how it works. So, for this video I'm going to be using both Zero and Axton, because Zero has good synergy with the Bekah's critical hit damage because it is a Jacob's weapon, and Axton has good synergy with assault rifles, boosting mag size and damage and all that good stuff. So anyway, on to the skill tree I'm actually going to be using. So this is the one that I have for Zero. This takes the fullest advantage of all his very, very powerful critical hit skills, such as Headshot, which boosts critical hit damage by 40% if you have 10 out of 5 in it. Then there is Killer, which will give you extra critical hit damage after a kill. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Bore here. So, as you can see, Zero has the skill called Bore, where basically the gist of it is the more enemies you have lined up, the higher damage you're going to be doing to the next enemy in line. So if you have 4 enemies lined up and you have a pistol that deals 10 damage, you will deal 10 damage to the first guy, 20 damage to the next guy, on and on and on, which can make for a very, very powerful skill. Now the Bekah has something similar. It is like Bore, but it does not have the damage increase. So the Bekah will pierce through multiple enemies, even with characters that don't have Bore. Now this skill here, Velocity, I'm going to get into it a little bit later as to why it may not be the best idea to have it, but I've spec'd into it just because of the extra critical hit plus the bonus gun damage. And then obviously Deathmarking Kunai, which I went over in the Unforgiven video. And now this is another kill skill follow through, so gun damage is again boosted by another 30%. And that's all of the important skills that are going to very, very heavily influence the performance of this gun. So now I'm over at the target range. So I don't have any skills in my skill tree currently, as you can see right here. So this will be just the base damage of the gun doing this. So as you can see there, 3917k. So that is 3.9 million damage from a headshot. And a body shot there is 775,000. So this is a very powerful weapon. Okay, so now on to actually showing what the gun does. So when you pull the trigger, you will fire a single projectile that after a certain distance will spawn 3 additional projectiles. Now when these 3 additional projectiles spawn, they will be frozen in midair for a split second before rapidly accelerating to their top speed. So for those of you that weren't so good at math, that means that the initial projectile you shoot will spawn 3 additional projectiles that will follow the original projectile after a split second. So you could potentially deal 4 times the amount of damage listed on the card with just one trigger pull. Now here's something that really surprised me when I started recording this showcase. As you can see, the distance for the bullets to split is extraordinarily short. Now before I actually started messing around with this gun for this video, I thought that the projectile split took a lot longer because that's how it is with a couple of other Pearlescent weapons. But the Bekah's projectile split very quickly, which means that it's quite reliable in short and medium range encounters. So now it's time to talk about velocity, that skill I mentioned a little bit earlier. So as you can see on the card, if you have 10 out of 5 in velocity, you have 200% bullet speed. Now, that actually becomes a huge problem to weapons that have splitting projectiles, because it means that the bullet will not split, the secondary projectiles will not spawn for a much greater distance. Now as you can see here, I am a significant distance away from this wall. This is actually 3 times the distance that you would normally need when using the Bekah without velocity. So if you do want that extra critical hit damage and that extra gun damage, you will be making it significantly less reliable in close and even medium ranges. Okay, so now onto the gear that I'm actually going to be using. So I'm going to be using this legendary killer class mod. Now this class mod is 5 levels under, which is not the best, but it works for me. I also start out wearing this sham, but it doesn't last very long. I'm also using the 4x variant of the magic missile just so I can get easy slag. And I'm also using this mouthwash relic, which is 7 levels under, which is definitely not good. I should probably get a new one, but that'll boost my assault rifle damage by an extra 41%. And now for the part that you've been waiting for. So I'm over here on Heroes Pass just because this is the best map to be on for a variety of different enemies, including flesh-based enemies, loaders, and plenty of enemies with shields. Now as you can already see, this weapon is really good as long as enemies are slagged up and not moving. It'll easily rip through both loaders and flesh enemies, even if those flesh enemies have shields up. I mean, I told you the sham wouldn't last very long, so now I'm wearing the antagonist, which will make it even easier for me to slag enemies. Now this next little bit kind of perfectly shows off both the good and the bad about the Bekah. So in terms of good, this is the perfect range for if you have 10 out of 5 in velocity. So the secondary projectiles will spawn just before hitting enemies, which means that you will be doing a lot more damage, which is really good. But as I said, there is some bad to this as well, in that because the secondary projectiles freeze, that does mean that enemies can be staggered, or can roll out of the way or dodge in some other method. Or if you're not leading your shots, even just walking will be enough for them to completely avoid the secondary projectiles. And there is also a significant amount of random recoil. So as you can see with this RPG loader, it takes me 3 full magazines to finally kill him, while just clicking as fast as I can because of the random recoil. And this was definitely something that I did deliberately for the video, and I absolutely did not panic in this situation. Now I should mention that this recoil problem can be pretty much eliminated if you have either a dull stock or if you have the stability prefix, which in this case is the horse prefix. But in my opinion, the best prefix is probably the boss prefix, just so that you can get as much damage out of the gun as possible. So now I'm over at the Vault of the Warrior in order to kill, well, the Warrior. Now this fight is fantastic for the Bekah because the Warrior has a giant glowing critical hit spot that is super easy to hit. Now to show off just how powerful this gun can be in this fight with the right build, I'm going to be using the B shield. Now the Bekah's secondary projectiles do get amp damage bonus from the B shield, so each of those secondary projectiles will be getting an additional 1.7 million damage added onto them, which needless to say results in a stupid amount of damage. In fact, it's so much damage that it can basically just speak for itself. So yeah, it does a little bit of damage. And the only reason I wasn't able to kill the Warrior in one cycle was because of the fairly low mag size, which unfortunately there is nothing you can really do about that with 0. Now you may notice that it took me an extra magazine and a half in order to finish off the Warrior, and that was just because of a couple of small things, like I wasn't coming out of Deception, and I wasn't really hitting critical hits for those last little bit. But now the Warrior is dead, and that's pretty much it for the 0 side of this showcase. So on to Axton. So this is the skill tree that I'm going to be using with Axton. And as I mentioned earlier, Axton's skill tree does help boost assault rifle damage and mag size and a bunch of stuff to make the assault rifles actually pretty decently viable. Now the first skill here is Onslaught, which after you get a kill, you get an extra 60% gun damage if you have 10 out of 5 in it. Next is Impact, which just flatly increases gun damage by 20%. Then there's Overload, which increases mag size by 50%. Now Steady here is actually really good with the Bekah, because as I showed earlier, there is quite a bit of random recoil, so having less of that is definitely a good thing. And then there's Metal Storm, which again is another kill skill. Now the fire rate bonus granted by Metal Storm doesn't affect the Bekah because it is a Jacob's weapon, and so it will fire as fast as you pull the trigger. But again, the recoil reduction is pretty significant. So now there's Battlefront, which is just a flat 66% damage boost to gun damage if you have your turret out, as long as you have 11 out of 5 in the skill. Then there's Duty Calls for non-elemental guns, which the Bekah, because it is a Jacobs, cannot have an element, so it takes advantage of that extra 25% gun damage. And then lastly here we have Last Ditch Effort, which is just extra gun damage of movement speed when you're in Fight for Your Life, making it easier for you to get a second wind. And now for the gear I'm using. So I'm using a Rifleman class mod, just because it boosts assault rifle mag size and gun damage even more, as well as +6 and +5 to Battlefront and Onslaught respectively. And then I have an easy mode shield, but that's just for the high capacity. It doesn't provide any specific bonuses. I have a Zero Fuse longbow bouncing Bonnie, just for probably the easiest slag in the entire game. And as I did with Zero, I'm going to be using the Mouthwash Relic, which boosts assault rifle damage by 47%. So I'm back on Heroes Pass in order to kill more baddies. And something that you'll probably notice pretty much right away is that Axton is much better at general mobbing with the Bekah than Zero is. Because Zero generally has to focus on critical hits in order to get the most out of the Bekah, you have to be more slow and methodical, and any body shots that hit won't do as much damage. Whereas with Axton, because he boosts the base damage of the gun, you're able to hold your own very well, even against enemies that aren't slagged. So one little quirk about the Bekah that I hadn't mentioned up until now is that it can actually make it really easy for you to heal. So as you can see here, I get absolutely ripped apart by this RPG loader. He takes me straight down to health gate. So I wait behind here in order to let my shield recharge. With the build that I'm currently running, once my shield is fully recharged, then I start regenning health. But I don't want to wait for that. So I fire the Bekah and completely miss my shot, as you do with 1100 hours in the game. But on my second shot, I fire, switch to a Moxie weapon, in this case the Grog Nozzle, and I get a ton of healing because I'm doing damage while holding a Moxie weapon. So that was just a really easy way for me to gain health. I didn't mention it on Zero because he can do the same thing with his kunai, so he doesn't have to worry about using specific weapons. So I just also kind of wanted to quickly show that the extra 40% damage in Fight for Your Life can be the difference between dying and getting a second wind. So as you can see, I'm downed by this badass loader, and I'm spamming away as much as possible, hoping to kill him before I die. And just before I die, I'm able to kill him and get a second wind. So that extra 40% damage while in Fight for Your Life really does help whenever you're in a situation like this. So as I did with Zero, I will be killing the warrior with Axton. And I'll tell you right now, it's a little bit disappointing after seeing Zero. So once again, I am going to be using a B shield. This one is a little bit worse, but it doesn't end up mattering because of the fact that, unfortunately, against bosses, Axton's bonus gun damage cannot compare with Zero's extra critical hit damage. So I also throw out my turret in order to get the extra 66% damage from Battlefront. So short of having a kill skill, this is pretty much the maximum damage that Axton can do to bosses like this. And as you can see, it is really not that much damage. So something I find pretty funny about this actually is that Axton takes off about as much health as Zero leaves, to the point that it's pretty much a perfect matchup, and I just find that pretty funny. So this is where I would start to show the differences between the gun in the base game and the gun with the unofficial community patch installed. But because the Bekah is so well balanced in the base game, the unofficial community patch literally changes absolutely nothing about it, so there's nothing to show. So then that right there is going to be the end of the showcase. But it's not actually the end of the video, so for those of you who can't really be bothered to watch the rest of it, because it will be pretty much entirely unedited, Basically, the summary of what I'm going to be saying in the next couple of minutes is I'm not going to be making another one of these videos. And now to those who are interested in watching and hearing the explanation, here it is. This video has technically been in production for 5 months. I recorded all of the gameplay and also all the zero commentary during the end of February into the beginning of March, and then I basically dropped the project. I didn't even open Filmora until just a few days ago, because I will be uploading this a couple of days after my birthday. So I basically just decided to get this done, get it off my back, get it off my shoulders, give myself a birthday present of sorts, so that I just don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to think about it anymore. So that I can kind of go back to a fairly regular uploading schedule. Because this video is basically what stopped my channel during those 5 months. Because I didn't want to upload anything while this project was still going. But I also didn't really want to work on this project because this video took me between 25 and 30 hours to make. And I mean, look at this timeline. The video up till this end point has only been 14 and a half minutes, right? But I have spent 30 hours on it, between 25 and 30 hours on it. Now, obviously I was using a very inefficient method. I mean, look at all these files. 49 audio files, as in I recorded 49 of these voiceover commentaries in order to put them in the video like this. And that's not even counting the ones that I recorded, didn't like the sound of, then deleted. So yeah, I did it terribly inefficiently. And I realized that the way I've been talking about it makes it seem like I'm really disappointed in it. No, I am super proud of how this video turned out. Like, talking as someone who watches YouTube like a lot, like very regularly, if I were to see this video, I would think that whoever had made this video had been editing for like at least a couple of years. Now, obviously I'm going to be biased in this sentiment, but I am truly proud of it. I do really like how it came out. The only issue is, if I were to do other Pearlescent reviews, or guides, or videos, or whatever, they would be in this format, and it is absolutely not worth it for me to put 25 to 30 hours of time and energy and brain power into making a video that maybe 10 people will see at this current time, this current subscriber count, and even fewer people than that will actually care about it or know what I'm actually even talking about. So yeah, it's just not worth it for me to do any more Pearlescent videos. However, that does mean that I will be doing regular uploads. I forget if I've already mentioned this already, because I'm just talking for 7 straight minutes right now. This project is basically what killed my channel over those last 5 months. But now that it's completed, I can get back into regular uploads. So that'll mean like every 2 or 3 days I'll be uploading a video, including 2 or 3 days after I upload this one. So that next video will probably end up being Beat Saber, just so I can record and edit some other games and get them ready for videos. And then I'll hopefully be back into regular upload. Every 2 or 3 days will be a new video, and I'm going to keep that going. I'm not going to take on any projects like this. It's just because it's not worth it at this point in channel size. So anyway, if you did end up liking this video, then a like would be hugely appreciated, because I did spend a lot of time on it. If you want to be seeing those videos I'm going to be getting back into uploading, then subscribe. That'd be pretty neat. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a good morning, day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this, and I'm out of here.